58. Ring my bell. Recorded live Sunday, April 12th, 2026, live from iTechGear Central. As I said, I'm Christopher Spera, the editor-in-chief here at the iTechGear.org. Joining us this week, man, we've got a full crew today. And I always love it when we've got all the usual suspects, but we've got the editor at iTechGear and a former contributing editor at Gear Diary and the late great Pocket. Now, that's Mr. Chris Gavula. How are you, sir?
I'm good, but I always wonder, we always start by telling us that we're recorded live. What does that actually mean? What's the alternative?
Right. That's like on a golf tournament when they say he has the outright lead. Well, no shit.
or when they used to say recorded in front of a live studio audience, as opposed to what? Drugged? I mean,
well, as opposed to a closed set where they've got a laugh track. Where they've got a laugh track.
But we're of course we're recorded live. What else would we be?
You're a big help. I'm so glad you're here.
I'm live.
Thank you.
That.
Thank you. Actually, I'm Memorex, so it's okay. I'm sitting here with my hair all blown back. For those that remember the commercial,
the Bose commercials. Yeah, I remember.
No, that was a Memorex commercial.
I'm pretty sure it was Bose.
Nope.
The guy sitting in the chair with the blowing back.
Yep. No, that's a Memorex commercial.
Memorex.
Is it live or is it Memorex?
That's right.
Yep. And the unspoken voice here, the man with all the buttons, pushing all the sound effects, that's the editor over at iTechGear, the former contributing writer at Gear Diary, and currently the host of the Linux Link Tech Show, Living in the Retro Arcade podcast, and Fitness for the Rest of Us. That's Brother Joe McLaughlin. How are you, sir?
I'm doing just ducky.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Oh, my goodness.
It's that bad, huh?
Yeah. Oh, they found the photos that. See, I just ran a race. So
well, I was just going to say you've done some good stuff so far today.
Yes.
You had fun.
I did. I had a blast.
Your message, your medal's got a little bell that you can shake and ring at the same time.
Yeah. See.
There you go.
But yeah.
Clackety.
Yeah, that's for. Those in the Columbus, Ohio area, I ran the OSU 4-miler, which happened at the Ohio State University, and I finished on the 50-yard line at Ohio Stadium. Got within 3 minutes of my goal time. I was 3 minutes over where I wanted to be.
That's not bad at all, man.
But no,
seriously,
43 minutes.
That's pretty good.
They'd have still been looking for me.
But there's nothing like running down the same ramp that the Ohio State Buckeyes run down each and every home game and entering in that stadium. It is an incredible experience, and it's one I'm going to do again next year. So it was very fun.
Oh, cool.
So, yep. Next year I might actually pay for the VIP treatment.
Ooh.
Yeah, but we'll see. We'll see.
All right. And of course, last but never, ever least, we've got the editor here at iTechGear and the former co-owner of WUGNET Publications. That's the Windows Users Group Network. That's Dr. Mr. Larry McJunkin. How are you, sir?
I'm tired. I've been putting in some major yard work hours, and I am really glad that my lot in life was not that of a landscaper. That's a tough job, I'm telling you.
It is.
On your hands and knees, putting border stones down. Oh, my God.
God bless my son-in-law and his pointed little head. He used to go, he had a landscaping business on the side as a side gig for years.
That's tough.
And he would go and he would work he'd normally work like a 12-hour shift at the candy factory, and then he would he's a maintenance supervisor there, and he would then come back after working the night shift, so he'd work third shift, and then he'd come back afterwards. He'd go ahead and from like 8 a.m. until like 3 in the afternoon, and he'd cut lawns and edge and landscape and all that stuff, mulch and landscape and whatever else. I mean, he turned 30 and he just kind of put the kibosh on all of it.
Young. I'm not young.
Yeah, no. He's going to be, I think 33 this year, and he stopped about 3 years ago. He said, yeah, uncle.
Uncle.
After 30 years and 3 kids, I'm done. After turning 30, he said, "Nope, no more. I'm good."
Yep.
Good man, but even still. Anyway, so there's some interesting things that have happened this week in the Apple segment, and I want to go ahead and I want to get us into that. And Larry, this is one of the things that you've been talking about since the release of the 26s. And the big feature there, of course, was the inclusion of the new look and feel for the 26s, for the OSs, which was Apple Glass, and 26.4 apparently, at least on iOS and apparently iPad OS, you can now turn that off or get rid of it, can't you?
Not quite.
Not quite. How is that? How is that? What's
I got to think that I'm thinking back since the very first iPhone. I don't think I've ever seen anything more controversial than when they debuted this thing called liquid glass.
Even iOS 7. I mean, remember they got rid of skeuomorphism and
that was a big deal. That was a big deal. And you know what? I mean, it's only the only reason I don't personally care for liquid glass is it's just my vision. I don't. I have a couple of vision issues which allow me not to see what I'm really supposed to. I can't see 3D. If I go to a 3D movie, I can't see it.
Okay.
Bottom line. So I don't get all the whoop-de-doo about all it looks like is a bunch of bright, flashy crap on the screen to me. So over time, Apple sort of kind of added a thing or two every new version that would help you tune it a little more down if you wanted, but they never really took it away, and they still haven't. But they did add a new setting called Reduce Bright Lights. And what that does, it specifically tones down the distracting, flashy elements when you touch a button or put your cursor in a little window or something. So while it's not a full removal of liquid glass, it does remove one of the most noticeable visual annoyances, that flashing, glowy effect. So, I mean, for me, I don't know. I actually kind of got used to it. I went back today and played with it after I turned this on, and I put it all back in. And you know what? It doesn't make any difference. It is what it is. If you can live with either one of them. I don't care if you can see.
It's interesting that to you it's a flashy effect, because to me it doesn't look like any flashing whatsoever. It just looks like you're looking through water.
Yeah,
well, but that's what they call it, even in the article.
I know.
I
agree. I agree, but it doesn't appear that way.
You don't see it like that.
No, to me, it just looks like a translucent water drop.
No, my windows, like where you like a search bar or something like that.
Yeah,
they turn like white, glassy looking things. They're awful looking.
I'm actually a fan of liquid glass, and it looks fine to me. It reminds me a lot of what Aqua kind of used to sort of look like before we had the horsepower to really drive it.
Right. Yeah. But I think more than anything, guys, is kind of a part of a bigger trend. Apple's actually responding to some of the user complaints. That's the story to me.
Well,
but at least I've gotten used to it. But for those people who really hate it.
Yeah.
At least they have a way to totally minimize it.
What I think fascinating, Larry, is we all said this a few months ago that whether we liked it or didn't like it, it would be nice if it was kind of tunable, or you could tone it down or tone it up. And this is what they've done. So I personally think this
kudos to Apple for having
a happy place to be. Listen. Yeah. So I didn't want to get rid of it, but I'm glad that they can turn it down for people who don't like it.
It's awesome. A usability for many people. It's a usability improvement.
Absolutely true.
It's just like there's always going to be things about iOS and any other operating system we have that some people just aren't going to like.
It's not going to satisfy everyone,
Remember, Chris, we used to talk about the differences between Samsung's One UI versus their versus other Android interfaces,
right?
And we always thought it was so over the top.
God forsake Moto Blur. Ugh.
Oh, they all have their things.
Yeah,
they've all had their things. So I'm glad to see that Apple has made this tunable, because you generally don't see that in these OSs.
Very true.
So it's nice to see it.
Very true.
I sort of think we're seeing a kinder and more gentle Apple these days.
I agree.
I don't know, but we'll go with that.
Anyway,
speaking of a kinder and gentler Apple, there's some rumors that are out there, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say rumors and kick that off here first. And this is a rumor that there's some rumored features that could make the iPhone Air 2 a pretty good choice. What do you think, Larry?
Something I should put on my button.
There are, but let me be perfectly clear. Regardless of getting any new features, which it may or may not get, that weren't on the first version, the iPhone Air simply isn't for everyone.
No.
If you're one of those who are big into photography, and I don't mean just big, but I mean if you're borderline prosumer or pro, you are not going to like this phone. It's just not going to happen.
True.
But I will. I mean, I don't care. I love it. I love the form factor. I love the weight of the phone. And even now, having long since sold my original iPhone Air, I still lament selling it a little bit and getting the iPhone 17. But only if Apple resolves the 4 main issues that this phone has, and I'm going to tell you about these real quickly, I'll absolutely buy it again if they fix them.
Sure.
Actually, there have been times when I almost went back, but I didn't. Number one thing, it's got to have another camera. Even for people like me who only take casual pictures, it's missing that wide angle. It's just missing it.
Sure.
So if they put a second main camera in, and the rumor says, I should say, they're going to introduce a 48 megapixel wide fusion lens to fill this gap. If they do that, good. Second thing, this is a big one for me. That phone is hot. I don't care what anybody tells you.
Yeah.
If that phone can lay there on the table and I go to pick it up after 20 minutes, it's hot. So if they add vapor chamber cooling, which they say they may, then that'll be number 2. The original iPhone had a new modem chip. It had the 5G C1X, which was supposedly better, purportedly, than the C1 processor, which is currently in the 16 and 17 iPhones.
Right.
So in theory, it was and still is a better modem, but I never noticed personally any difference. It just worked. I mean, I believe this. I never had a moment's trouble with it, but I'm sure it's better.
Sure.
So that's not a big thing to tick off right there. But the other third thing out of the 4 that's huge is improved battery life.
So this is going to be a big one.
I don't use my phone all that much. I really don't. But 7 or 8 o'clock at night, I was always looking for a charger. And this is a must.
That's going to be a toughie if they keep it as thin as they're keeping it, though.
Yeah.
I don't know how they can do it.
That's a tough thing. I mean, that was the one thing they gave up.
They've got the camera bar that's going all the way across the device. That would be the only real place that they would have for any sort of expansion, unless they widen that out, depending on how they're gonna orient that second camera. If they make that a little bit wider, they may have some extra space for an additional battery or for more but still, it's going to be a lot.
If you look at this phone from a different perspective from us, we geeks here on the show, or other people like us, we had dinner the other night with some really close friends, really nice folks. And I mean, they're techies of sort. I mean, they both drive a Tesla. They're all into, especially she is. She does creates her own music on a Mac and blah, 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 blah. They just traded in iPhone 14 Pros for the iPhone Air, the original version. They're like in La La Land, like, oh my God, this is the best thing since bread.
I was going to say, Larry, there's a couple of, for me, the one thing would be the camera. If they fix the camera, I could almost live with anything else. If they would and I don't mean fix like it's broken. It's not broken.
No, but
it's not what it should be. They needed to do the dual lens at least. They needed to do that.
I agree.
And I think they would address a lot of that just by doing that one thing. But I want to say one more thing that this Air, we talked about this a few weeks ago too. This thing's selling better than the Plus that it replaced.
Yep,
it is. So, it's selling better now, they say, than it ever was.
It's actually caught on a little bit. So I find that fascinating that they've actually caught on and they're selling.
To quote, these folks went with. They also changed carriers. And they went to AT&T from Verizon.
Oh, okay.
And the kid that sold them the phone was pretty honest. He said, he said, this phone, when we first started carrying it, it didn't sell worth a darn. But he said, we can't hardly keep them in stock now. So I mean, why would he
I,
say that? I mean,
I don't know what the deal is, but it's interesting to me this thing seems to have had a second wind. I don't know why, but
which is unusual for
yeah.
Apple. I mean, this thing was received, or at least it was anticipated with great aplomb, right? I mean, this was a hugely thin phone. This was going to be, really popular with the younger kids or the younger folks because it was so thin as in.
Chris, the one thing that impresses everybody, and it certainly did me, and I think even Chris G, when you first hold that phone in your hand, I don't care if it's got a case on it or not. It's like, holy cow, this is
really
thin. Yeah.
Well, it's not just that it's thin; it's balanced. The problem is with
it feels right.
If you look at it, it looks like it's going to be top heavy. You're going to think that
because of the big bar that goes all the way across.
But it doesn't feel top heavy. That's the clever thing. It actually feels balanced and right when you hold it. It doesn't feel too thin. Yeah. Sometimes, remember, we used to talk about these with the Edge devices,
right?
The Samsung Edge. It was too thin, and it's like it wanted to fall out of your hand all the time.
And the screen wrapped around the edge of the phone, which is where it got its name, and it always screwed things up when you tried to grab it.
But you also felt like you couldn't hold it smoothly, like it was always wanting to fall out. This doesn't feel like that. That's the interesting thing. It feels really good.
Right. I agree with Chris G on this one. The camera, even for those of us, for any photographer, it's got to have another.
I think even for a moderate photographer, they're going to need a
even
better
for
camera.
me.
Yeah, I think that's. I mean,
right. No, when even the iPhone 17 has two camera lenses, has that standard in that 48 megapixel wide angle, and this one is sitting only with that one standard lens. It really kind of makes you wonder what the heck is going on here, and am I really taking a step down in terms of being able to take even just a casual picture?
Right. I'll be honest. I thought about this one too. I mean, I thought hard about this device. I said, I just cannot do. I'm not a pro. I don't use all the pro features in my cameras or anything like that.
Right.
I'm not that kind of guy.
Right.
But I do enough event kind of things that I wanted better than that offered.
Right.
I just needed something a little better. If they had done the camera, I would have lived with the battery. I would have lived with some of these other compromises that they made. But that was the one thing I couldn't let go. So
and I
if
agree
they do
with
it,
you here.
I agree with you here. If they do what we think
and
they're going to do,
it may be the only phone that we'll see in black next year.
Maybe.
That may be true, Larry.
Know.
That may be true.
You never know.
Don't get me started.
Fair enough.
Anyway, moving things forward here. Interestingly enough, speaking with the popularity of the iPhone Air 2 and this resurgence and comeback, apparently Apple is now the top global smartphone in the market for the very first time, and that's very interesting.
I kind of thought that had happened before, but I guess not. And maybe it's a different metric they were measuring by before. I don't know. But the metric that we're using here is the year-over-year sales increases. This is now the top one, and it's the only major phone that went up in terms of percentage sales. Now the overall market has shrunk a little bit.
It has.
These guys went up 5%. Samsung dropped 6%, and everybody else dropped.
Yeah.
So, and here's the thing that's interesting about this. We've talked about this previously, Chris. We've talked about this previously.
Right.
This orange, for some reason, this stupid orange color sells. And it's caused a huge increase in sales
especially in China,
of all places. Here too.
Other phone makers are copying it too.
But so you kind of shake your head and go, okay, why is that the feature everybody's glommed onto? But
why is everybody all of a sudden, wanting the Shamrock Shake? The Arctic Orange, the Shamrock Shake. Why?
And so if this next one, and Chris, I think you and I were talking before about this too.
Yep.
If next year's model is red, like they say it's going to be, that'll do very well in the Asian markets as well.
Absolutely.
Red is a very lucky color.
Yes, it is seen as a very lucky color, and it's something that everybody wants to have.
So I think
they couldn't keep the product red in stock when they had it. You couldn't find one.
Yeah, I know. It was very difficult. It was very difficult to get.
I wanted one badly. Never could get one.
I I had an XR for a little while there that was that red, that product.
So did my
red.
son. So did my oldest.
It was absolutely, they're
too.
that red that they use is gorgeous. It's just
It
a
is.
gorgeous color red.
Yep.
So, it can't, anyway, so that's the interesting thing. Yeah, Apple is now the top of the market worldwide. They've been the top of the US market for a couple years now. Now they're at the top of the worldwide market.
Well,
and we're talking about individual companies making phones.
Yes.
We're not talking about operating systems. But
No,
to be fair,
just phone brands.
But to be fair, Android is not a single market anymore. They've all kind of schismed quite a bit.
Didn't Samsung hold this title before?
They did, and they're actually so now Apple is holding 21% of the worldwide market. Samsung's holding 20%. So they're not far behind.
Still close.
No.
Right, and then Xiaomi is at 14%. Oppo is at 11%. Vivo is at 7%. And everybody
Chris,
else has
Chris,
got
those are the 2025
29%.
No, you're looking at the wrong year, Chris. Those are the 2025 numbers, not the 2026 numbers.
Sorry. Okay.
2026 so far.
Samsung is still at 20%. Right. Xiaomi is at 12, not 14.
Yeah.
Oppo's at still at 11.
Yep.
Vivo is at 8, not 7.
And some of those names regular people don't understand. They've never heard of them.
They're mostly Chinese brands.
Yes, they are.
Or whatnot.
Yes, they are.
It's fascinating. That Apple is in this position at this point in time. It's a strange.
Xiaomi, Oppo, and Vivo are all Chinese brands.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yes.
Samsung, of course, is Korean. Apple,
and for the folks
American.
who didn't know, Oppo is also who made OnePlus. So,
right.
That was under their brand header as well.
It was.
So,
it was, but it's the 9 to 5 Mac article that we're citing has got some really neat ring charts here that show this.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting.
So here they are.
Q1 2025 versus Q1 2026. There's a minus 6% overall shrinkage year over year in market, but interestingly enough, everybody else is down. Vivo is only down 2%, right? And versus Xiaomi down 19, and Samsung down 6, but Apple is up 5. So
it's a very, very interesting marketplace right now. So
it is.
We'll have to see where it goes, I guess. Anyway, that was kind of one of those fascinating kind of stories I ran into this week.
Right. So, and the percentages that are in that particular chart and that we've cited may not add up to 100% due to rounding. So if there's a rounding error, not my fault, kids.
It's not my fault, kids.
Not my fault.
And there are some non-Android phones in that mix of things as well.
Absolutely, in that 28% of all others, there's going to be some non-Android, non-iOS based phones. So anyway,
so Apple's good news keeps going on here.
This is true. Yeah. The MacBook Neo has been such a hit, all right, that there is now a chip shortage.
So yeah, that's kind of an interesting thing. So let's make it clear for folks. What Apple did was they took the A18 chip, the A18 Pro, that was in like the iPhone 16s, some of the 16
Pro, right?
And basically that's normally a 6 GPU chipset or die.
Yep.
And when you have a failed one, rather than throw them away, they take one of the GPUs away. They call it a binned chip.
Yeah, they toss it in literally toss it in a box.
Toss it in a bin. So
it has very little effect on it.
And so Apple, what they do, it's kind of like chicken McNuggets, kids. It's made from parts. Okay, they took spare parts.
And parts are parts.
They took the spare parts and made the MacBook Neo out of it.
Yep.
And as a result, they did a very good job using up some of the stuff that otherwise would have had to been thrown away. I get it. But they don't have enough of them now.
Now they're running out.
It's sold so well that they're running out of those chips. And so the question is, what are they going to do? Do they make more? That's expensive. And I want to point out, part of the reason it's very expensive to do that right now is because they've already ramped some stuff down because they're making the A19s and they're starting to ramp up on the A20s.
Right.
So they don't really have just a line that they can just turn back on and go. They've got
this is true. This
They've got to
is true. And this
spin
is
stuff
this.
back
No,
up.
and just for explanatory purposes, the bin chip isn't something you can produce. It's a
No.
byproduct. I mean,
It's
Yeah,
a
well,
by-
yeah, no,
well,
it is. It's a
well,
defective. It's a quote unquote
You-
defective or
defective
not up
chip.
to full spec chip.
but let me add the other big part of the problem here is that the A18 chip series, the Pro series, is a 3 nanometer process.
Yep.
All the newer stuff is 2 nanometer,
Yep.
and so you cannot easily go back to a 3 nanometer process.
No.
It's an undertaking to turn it
It
back
is.
up. So we don't know what Apple's going to do. They may just say, you know what, it's done until the next model comes up. They may do that.
Maybe. And if you get
Or
one,
they
you get
could
one. If
eat
you
it.
don't,
They
you
could
don't.
eat it and put a better chip in it.
Yeah. And according to Mac Rumors, the source that we're citing here, they're already stockpiling binned A19 Pro chips from this year's iPhone Pro models
Because they were going to use it
next
for
year's year's MacBook Neos.
Yeah,
right?
I think, Larry, and that's you raised a good point. They might choose to just sort of eat it and go with a better chip now. I don't think they're going to do that. Not this soon. It's too
Probably
close.
not. No.
To the release
they
of
could.
Well, but I don't think they will, because if they did it right now, the machine hasn't been out long enough. People will be pissed
There'd
off.
be a lot of people that would get really
Yeah, make a good point. Good point.
So I think from a marketing standpoint, they need to wait a little while.
Agreed.
You know, I think they'll just ride it through for a few months is what
Agreed.
they'll probably do.
Well, you know what? The longer that people can't buy it, the more they'll anticipate it and the more they'll order it.
You know, I think the best thing I've seen somebody say about to describe this machine and why people are probably buying it is it's better than it has a right to be.
I could not agree more. I've had my hands on 5 or 6 of them now.
Yeah,
I'm telling you.
That phrase is
I'm
kind
blown away.
It shouldn't be as good as it is for the
That's
price
true.
point.
That's actually true.
It shouldn't be that good, and it's not perfect. We've talked about this.
No, we've talked about it extensively. It's not the know-all end-all.
But for the
you
price
don't
point,
notice the imperfection is the problem.
No, you can push it to the imperfections. You can see the issues if you push it.
You and I can, but Billy Joe Bob can't.
Most people are not going to hit that. You're right,
No.
and so. Yeah, I can see why it's popular. I can see why they have a problem. I mean, I'd love to have this problem in our lives, you know.
Yeah.
Well, you do. You bought one.
No. I mean, in terms of not selling too much, you know, not having enough parts to make when I'm selling. That's not a bad problem to have, kids. If you're going to have a problem, that's the one you want to have. You know, that's the one you want to have.
True.
So anyway, I thought that was this is another fascinating thing. It's like, well,
it is, and it's an excellent problem to have. So,
they're like I say, they're on a roll right now with some of these things.
They're
very lucky.
2026 is going to be a very good year for Apple if they keep this pace up. It's going to be a very, very good year for them. But I want to go ahead and I want to move us to our AI segment, and this is I do, and this next story is I saw this and I was very, very pleased to see this because this is one heck of a development. One of the biggest problems that you had with Macs is that you could not connect a external GPU of any type, all right, to a Mac, whether it is a huge card or whether it's a docking station that's got a graphics card, a full-size desktop graphics card in it, or if it's got a just its own graphics card in the docking station. You couldn't hook it to your Mac and use that external GPU, but now you can, according to techradar.com. Isn't that right?
Yeah, well, it isn't that you couldn't do it before. The problem was, like Tiny GPU did create a driver for it before. The problem was Apple wouldn't support it, wouldn't back it in any way, shape, or form. So the reality was, even though they had this thing, nobody supported it. You know, software vendors didn't want to go down that path, and nobody wanted to play that game. So it really didn't matter. It was kind of a moot point, you know, as it goes. Now Apple has basically officially kind of blessed this driver,
which is really interesting.
Which they normally don't do for third-party pieces.
This is a first for Apple.
You know, so they're supporting this. They're supporting this driver, which means effectively you can now use these GE GPUs on it if you have Thunderbolt, if you have USB 4. If your Mac has that support.
Well, if you have at least Thunderbolt 4, yes.
Yeah, you got to have this. The point is you have to have the support, or you can't get there. If you don't support those features, you're not you're not going to be able to do this. But assuming you can do this, so the question then becomes, who are they going to do this for? Because this article that we're quoting here doesn't really talk about graphics apps or even gaming apps using it, although theoretically they could. It talks about its use for AI. That's how they focus on it.
This is what's cool about this.
They're focusing on its use for AI as an AI engine. So, okay, I can see that being a thing. And it's primarily, I should point out that this isn't necessarily going to work for, every possible GPU out there, right? It's only going to work for things that this driver supports. And I think they've approved it for AMD and for NVIDIA right now is the two that it's supported for. So, if you have either of those eGPUs, theoretically, you're going to be able to use them on some of your Macs, some of them. Right. So that's kind of fascinating to me that they're going down that avenue. This is an avenue they've never been down before. So,
which I think is huge, and being able to do this with Thunderbolt 4 or USB 4, all right, is going to be absolutely huge. You're going to find yourself being able to do a lot more with your older Mac. Like, as for example, my M1 Max has Thunderbolt 4.
Okay.
All right. So my MacBook Pro M1 Max will be able to use an eGPU if I get one. Right.
Theoretically, but this is a large. We say this is the first time Apple's
2021.
We say this is the first time Apple's done this, but that's not really the first thing that they've done like this. They've done some interesting partnerships with like Steam and NVIDIA relating to the Apple Vision Pro and connecting to other outside services. So it's kind of interesting how they're making these agreements all over the place. It's part of an interesting. It's kind of this trend we were talking about. What did you say earlier? A kinder, gentler Apple. I don't know. I don't know if I totally buy that, but all of these things speak very highly to them reaching out to vendors.
They are making some subtle changes to how they do business.
Things that they haven't done in a while, if ever. So it's interesting to watch.
They did on the Intel Macs. They did support eGPUs, but this is a first for the M series.
Well, but that was, you're right, they did, but that wasn't so much an Apple support thing as it was the fact that with an Intel-based Mac, it was already an Intel-based Mac. So it was a much easier lift, if you will.
True.
So I think that has a lot to do with it. But this is just a totally different animal. It's interesting to see them go down this path, but that is a good point. So they used to do a lot of these kinds of things, but at least I thought they did. But they seem to be going back to that for opening the back up again. So
there are a few requirements here that I want to go ahead and mention before we move on. You have to have Mac OS 12.1 or higher. You have to have USB 4 or Thunderbolt 4 and an available port, and you have to have a supported AMD RDNA 3 Plus or NVIDIA Ampere Plus supported GPU. All right.
Yeah. Absolutely true.
I am going to go ahead and include a link to the Tiny Grad Docs page that has got the instructions for installing the driver.
And keep in mind that even if you install a driver, even if you plug in the eGPU, so software knows to take advantage of it, you're not really going to be able to take advantage of it. You need to have software that'll utilize it. But I'm sure now that it's available, that'll come. I'm
absolutely. So, and the process here is that you first plug in the eGPU, initiate the driver install with a terminal command, and then it'll go ahead and trigger. After you do that, it'll trigger a system prompt, and then you should enable that driver after it's installed. And then if for some reason it doesn't show up or you missed it, you go into system settings, general, login items and extensions, driver extensions, and you toggle Tiny GPU on. So there you go. And that's it. All right. There's a couple of other things here that you do for your AMD or your NVIDIA driver. And then
Yeah.
That's it.
I'm sure
But
that
all the
process will get
it's a
better.
5-step process. It looks to be fairly simple. They give you all the commands and switches, so
Yeah.
should be pretty good and pretty
I'm
quick and
sure
easy.
they'll
And the
make that
link is
more
in the
auto.
show notes.
I'm sure they'll make it more automated as time goes on, and they'll make it
Absolutely.
so it work with just a click or something. But right now, there's a few steps, but it's worth it for people that need this. It's going to be worth it to them.
Right. Right. And if
No
you're
question.
if you're going to be doing any kind of graphic or graphic intensive work, or if you're going to do anything AI related, this is going to be a huge thing. So,
It is.
and there you go. But did you also know that Anthrop, and this I saw this and I thought this was interesting, Joel. Anthropic's latest AI, they say, is too powerful for the public, and so they're not going to release it to the public.
That's what they're saying.
So what the heck is going on here? We got a story from The Guardian that I thought was interesting.
So I guess what they're worried about is the fact that the biggest thing is they're saying it's so powerful it can find software vulnerabilities, I believe, that they're worried about people taking advantage of.
Oh, okay. So
Which
this thing is see, and this is where things start to get this without the bumpers that we've been talking about for the last 2-3 years that AI needs, right? Those things that are released to the general public or are at least available through some sort of a enterprise or retail channel, people are going to have a really hard time getting a hold of. But this has reached the notice of some of the top U.S. government officials, and at this point, you really have to wonder, how are they going to? What is the government going to do? Is the government going to do anything? Should there be industry adopted or and driven, or should there be some level of legislation or government sponsored bumpers?
Well, there should have been all along, but there wasn't. So you really think it'll happen now?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
I don't know for certain. Probably you're probably right, Larry. All right. I'm hoping though that somebody wakes up and says, we either need to self-govern or allow us to be governed by some kind of a regulatory agency, so that we don't create a problem for ourselves later on.
Yeah, I think that's going to be hard in the current climate, because you had a government that basically wanted Anthropic to remove the bumpers for them.
Yeah.
So I think you're going to have a challenge getting bumpers put on right now, but
you're probably right.
Probably.
Yeah.
So
plus the government right now is fully behind AI 100% on almost every single level, to the point where even data center protesters they're coming out against data centers, not knowing a lot of information because Trump or whoever, so so I mean, AI is I won't say universally hated. There's a lot of folks that don't like it.
But Anthropic is trying to basically say, look, we're the sane ones here. And that's the PR campaign they're trying to push.
Trying to say,
and that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to say, look,
right.
we're taking some fail safes. We're aware of this. I get it.
But you're keeping it to yourself. That's the problem. I mean, that's the whole problem there.
That and the fact, if
maybe what's the alternative? Just blow it out of there. Right. I mean, that's not right either. Well, so what are you going to do?
The other problem, there's another problem. All right.
If they're being honest about it, by the way, if they really do have this thing, we're making an assumption here.
Right. But there is another problem. All right. You've got and it is either the AI gaining some level of intelligence and it tries to escape. All right. And if it has access to the internet, it could escape. All right. On its own. Or more likely, you've got the human interaction or the human element here, and it could, at the very, very least, find its way out through that, that route.
Look, dude, all I wanted it to do was pick lottery numbers for me.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Oops.
Yeah, no. No.
Back to the guardrails and the bumpers thing.
Yes,
If you research this even a little bit,
Yeah.
every government from nearly every major country worldwide says they are quote unquote developing bumpers and guardrails.
Well,
They're
sure they are.
evolving, but if they're in that kind of a state, they're not applicable and they're not helping. So basically, they're not there. We're
let's be
working
honest,
on it. It's what they're saying. Even
by the time
our
they
own
get there,
government.
it's going to be too late, is what's going to
Right.
happen.
Right.
So we're back to what we've been saying for a couple of years now, at least, is that kids, there
I
has to be
want
bumpers
everybody
on this
to agree. I want everybody to agree that thou shalt not create Skynet. All right.
Yes.
And right now,
Right.
while that seems a little silly to say it out loud more than once, as we have, all right,
And we have,
but while it seems silly to say that, without any kind of regulation or any kind of self-imposed limitations, we are going to march down that line. All right.
Yeah, we're heading there pretty fast too.
Yes, we are.
The model that open or that Anthropic is using is got far more technical chops than Sam Altman seems to have seems to realize, right? And even though the CEOs go back and forth in a couple of podcasts that they've been
they do
on, and if for the Wall Street Journal as well as for a couple of other places like the New Yorker, honestly, if we don't impose some level of limit, having none means that it's going to go its own route. In other words, you're going to see something and you don't know whether or not you should do something, right? It's not whether or not you can, because of obviously it's going to live and grow on its own. And of course, as the creators here, you're going to give it access or allow it to do things that maybe you shouldn't. All right. And if you don't have those limits, you won't know where to stop.
Yeah.
And you got to know there are people sitting in some pretty dark corners right now doing that intentionally.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is where some of this sort of concerns me, where some of this kind of bothers me as to whether or not, it's not whether up to now with most of the things that we do, it's whether it's been, can we get to the moon? Can we get to Mars? Can we do the thing? Right?
Not should we do the thing?
Not should we, right? It's all been, can we do it? And you strive and you push and you drive to that because you want to test the limits of human capability.
Creativity, sure.
Right? And it's not whether
but you know what?
necessarily recognize whether or not you should.
But you know what? We're unnecessarily worrying because they won't be able to get anything done because they're going to have to buy software licenses first.
This is stupid. This is stupid.
Honestly,
and I toyed whether or not to put this here in the AI segment or stick this down in the Windows and Linux segment and beat Microsoft over the head with a stick with it. But
we can still do that. Don't worry.
We can still do that. But even still, Microsoft is saying that AI agents will need to buy software licenses. And I mean, the person that said this should be found and shot. All right.
Should be found insane for sure.
So,
well, it's something. It's definitely something. Yeah. The short form is, Microsoft executives are now saying, hey, if you're going to use agentic AI, that's where you basically use your AI as an agent on your desktop to do things
as a user, and a replacement for you. Yes,
proxy
as
for
a
you.
user, and why you can't transfer your license to that agent for that task.
You're going to have to basically buy a license for this agent, is what they're basically saying, or the agent's going to have to own a license to be operate independently.
And I can see a lot of folks on the consumer side as well as on the enterprise side saying, Rajesh Jha, the guy that floated this very proactive and innovative idea, you're smoking crack, dude. I pay you enough money as it is.
Yeah, but he says if if your agent is going to launch Outlook or launch Word and do something or whatever it's going to do, you're going to have to buy a license.
Share.
Yeah, you're going to have to buy a license for it because it's going to basically be taking up resources. So you need to pay a license for it.
Excuse me, you're full of shit. Then take your co-pilot buttons and shove them, and they kind of did, but we'll get to that later. But
sort of, but yeah,
sort of, but yeah, but I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, Microsoft charges enough in their software as a service pricing, and the fact that they're saying, okay, your AI is now needs to be a registered user and have its own license so that when you start the application and you tell it to do something, it can do it and it has a license to do so. Why your license doesn't cover that, I don't know or understand. But what they're saying is, companies like Microsoft, Salesforce, Workday are saying, hey, this is a new way for us to charge for seats and make extra money.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a distinction here. There's a distinction between I'm in a chatbot and I told the chatbot to do something that launched apps versus agentic AI, which will do things on its own without my immediate intervention.
Well, you still have to say, hey, I want to do this, go do this. And it's going to go and say, okay, I can do that with Excel or whatever.
But here's the thing. If I tell it, go ahead and use Outlook and do campaign emails. And I tell it to do that for 100 different campaigns at the same time. And it's launched 100 different agents to go launch these things. Now I'm hitting Office 365 pretty hard. Why shouldn't they get some money for that?
For two reasons. I get it. I understand. But for two reasons. One, because I'm the one that kicked it off and I have a seat.
No. That's what I'm trying to tell you. If you did it as a scheduled kind of process, you're not really kicking it off. And you don't even have to tell it to do it as a scheduled process.
But you told it to schedule the process.
You told it to schedule the process. It's a human. No, I totally disagree with you. And I take you to the mattresses with this one. There was still a human person that told it to go do the task.
That part's true, but you're missing the distinction. There's a distinction there. If I manually kick that process off and say, go do that, that's one thing. If I've told it to either do it as a schedule basis, go check it monthly, go check it yearly, and go do that.
Again, I still kick that off, and it's following an automation schedule, and the automation has been around forever.
But if I tell it to do it as fast as possible, it may choose to do 100 of them, as part of that process.
Not my problem. Then limit the AI.
They're saying
limit the AI, not
and
me.
They're saying this is their limit. That's what they're saying. That's all I'm trying to argue. Not that it should be. I'm just saying that's the distinction they're probably making.
Kiss my limit, okay? I'm sorry. They make enough money. All right. They make enough money. Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. No. I'm a very conservative-minded individual, and I'm all for capitalism, yay money. All right. But at the same time, all right, I pay enough money. I pay enough taxes. All right. I pay enough subscription fees. I pay enough for my software, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't need all this to pay all this extra money for just because
they're spending all their
somewhere said, here's an idea. Here's how we can make more. What the heck with you and you making more? You make enough.
Well, and that's where they're going.
Bleeding me dry.
I have a feeling this is a suggestion that's been made by a Microsoft executive. It is not an actual action that they've taken. But having said that, this is clearly
they're trying to plant a seed. That's all they're trying to do.
Yeah, and this is what they're thinking is going forward. And let's be honest, we've seen them try to suck everything they can by making us go into subscriptions, by making us have software that does things we don't really want it to do, and on and on and on. This is not an unexpected trend. This is not even an unexpected statement, to be honest with you. It's stupid. It's stupid, but it's not unexpected.
I think it's an overreach. I think it's a licensing overreach. All right.
Of course it is. And it probably won't succeed, at least not today. It may succeed down the road, though. Who knows? We'll see.
Perhaps.
As these things change capabilities, who knows what we're going to consider acceptable in a year or 2 years.
But I mean, come on.
Right now,
man.
but for right now, my reaction is, really, dude? Really? That's sort of my current reaction. But I thought it was interesting.
You can't get blood from a turnip. All right.
Nope. Mm-hmm. Well, they're going to try.
You can't get water from a rock. I don't care
but
how hard you squeeze it.
but you can put the turnip into a Vitamix, and
This is true. All right.
So
you can go ahead and get your Vitamita Vegemin and have a good time with
I'm
that.
just saying.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to like it, but that's where they're going to go.
I
hey,
think
we're
we've
good.
Eaten that horse
we
enough.
have.
I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move us to our mobile segment. And here's something that I think Joe is going to be a little bit happy with. The Google Pixel is the only Android line of phones that's growing at this point.
And it makes sense too, to be honest.
Why does it make sense, Joel?
Well, I've always said if you want the optimal Android experience, the one that's going to get the updates on time, and it's going to get all the new features first, go Pixel.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. I mean,
I gotta agree with that. I've been there a couple of times.
And that's why I think that's the big reason why they're growing over the others.
Yeah.
And they also come without that extra layer of crap that every other manufacturer puts on an Android.
Including Motorola, Samsung, and everybody else. They've got their own launcher.
They're getting better. They're getting better. It's not Bixby anymore. But
I have to agree, and I like the Pixels. I think it's a great Android device. But keep in mind, there's two things to keep in mind here. One is the Google Pixel still has a really, really, really tiny market share in the Android space. It's only 1 or 2%. It's not a very big percentage
in and of itself, and it fell into all of the others when we talked about market share earlier.
So the fact that they've had 14% year-over-year growth is great, but it's a big jump of a very small market right now. So I'm hoping. I do not, and I'll be honest with you, I don't understand why they haven't had a bigger growth.
My personal take on that is they can't put a slab together like Samsung has a piece of glass and stainless steel that's gorgeous. Every single Google Pixel is just a phone. It's not pretty. It's not a joy to hold. I
kind of disagree with that. If you go with
I like them, Joel. I like them a lot, but they're not gorgeous.
I agree. I kind of agree with what Larry's saying. First of all, I do think they have the best. I think they have the best and the cleanest version of the operating system.
They do,
and it's wonderful.
Absolutely, 1,000%.
No question. But the physical device, their specs are almost always kind of meh. They're really not even at the higher end. But even at the higher end, they're not the higher end. There's a lot of devices that have better performance numbers and things like that. So you kind of go, okay, it is what it is. But what they do is make very good use of what they have in there.
This is true.
But as far as the physicality of the device, there's nothing special about the look of a feel of a Google Pixel. They look okay, but they look, but there's nothing stand out as opposed to what he said with Samsung's. The Edge devices, we also used to look at that and go, that's pretty. Until we held it.
Right. I mean, and the other thing too, and I think this is going to grow in importance too.
Yeah.
Google Gemini is by far one of the best AIs there is. I mean,
I'm hands in with you right there.
I am literally very, very impressed with how it works. I literally had a conversation with it as I was making a drive. Oh, yeah, it works great with Android Auto. All right.
It does.
And I literally had a conversation with it, and I said, hey, all that stuff is great. Can you put that in a Google Doc or a Google Keep? And it did it. I mean, that's exactly how I want AI to work.
As long as you stay within their ecosystem. Yeah, that's true.
Yes. I mean, it's exactly how I want it to work.
Again, I've used all these big ones for my technical research, and it's so on that. To be honest with you, it's not that great at it. It's okay. It's not the worst. It's not the best, but
it's better than what Apple has.
But I have to create a lot of graphics, and nothing creates graphics like Nano Banana, and nothing. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, it's just.
Yeah.
And the other thing is when you ask ChatGPT to correct something that it got wrong when it created your graphic, it recreates the whole damn thing, but not Gemini. It just fine tunes every little thing you tell it to do.
Yeah.
And it's getting better on every iteration. I mean, don't get me wrong. It ain't perfect. Gemini is not perfect by any means.
No, none of them are, right?
It's really, really good. I mean, it's when I compare it to ChatGPT, I think it's better. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, so I mean,
Again, I think it depends on the type of task you're asking, but yeah, overall,
and where
probably.
And it's one of the reasons why you see things like cursive and other sort of AI quote unquote certification programs
Yeah.
that say, you know, if you're going to do coding, use this. If you're going to do
Claude,
pictures,
right.
do this. If you're going to do, you know, writing, use this tool. There are
If
different tools that have
if you
different
are a
strengths.
Google Workspace shop at all, you have to use Gemini because they just intertwine it inside of docs and sheets and
But if you're
slides.
not, it becomes so again.
Right.
For
That's
some of those
probably
kinds of
true.
things.
Probably true.
And that's fair. I mean, there's no reason it shouldn't be perfect.
No,
at
there
any of
should
that
be
stuff.
more than one
You know?
version of this stuff.
and that's a huge reason why I think the Pixel phones are growing in
Probably
because
true.
of that. Because
Probably true.
it's literally just built into the phone. It's like you don't think about it. I mean, it's there and it does everything you want it to do, and yeah, it probably does some things you don't want it to do too. But
Don't they
I have
all?
not found too much that it does that I'm not happy with.
Sure.
But the
There you
only
go.
thing I wish it would do is sometimes it's like I was driving somewhere today and I asked it a question and then it said, "Would you like me to take you?" No, I just wanted the answer. Thank you. I mean, you know, I don't need to go.
It's always a little too helpful at the end. You know?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
and that's the point where I say,
A
shut
lot
up.
of tools, a lot of the tools they'll have some suggestions. Hey, you know, if you want to do this, I can tweak here and tweak there.
They're very
you know,
ambitious is the word.
yeah.
Right. Sometimes you want that though, and that works. But sometimes I'm just asking a simple question, like while I'm driving, or like for example, I say navigate here, and it's like, okay, but would you like me to do no, navigate here?
I'm still waiting for
It's
the
like,
first
you know,
Google phone that I can integrate into the Apple ecosystem. When they make that, I'm buying it. But
Well, if Siri becomes Google based, you may have that sooner than you think.
Yeah.
Yep.
Who knows?
You may,
that may be true.
you know, it's hard to
Granted.
know.
Granted,
So-
the next story is something I kind of wish Google would do, but they're
Well-
probably not gonna.
Yeah,
Well,
no.
No,
Probably not.
and this next story is the Samsung Galaxy Z trifold sort of went out of stock, and then it was discontinued, and then it came back in stock, didn't it, Chris?
Yeah, briefly.
Briefly. Unfortunately,
So,
it appears to be out of
it-
stock again.
Yeah, so it's an interesting device. This is a trifold device as opposed to just a single fold. It's fascinating and it does a pretty good job of what it does, but it's also almost $3,000.
Yes.
Well, and they say trifold. It's only got two hinges though.
Mhm.
It's got three inside screens, right? But it's
Yes.
only got two hinges, so it's not
Yeah,
trifold per se.
unless you like shove the word panel in the middle or something
Right.
like that to imply that it's. I mean, you know. So yeah, it's got the name of it is the trifold though, so we have to kind of use that name. But what's
Mhm.
interesting is, and it's a nice device. It's a beautiful
is.
device. It got decent reviews. It's just really expensive. So they made only a minimal kind of. They only made a minimal amount of them to begin with. They didn't go crazy on production on these things because it's so
Right.
expensive, and they ran out of them pretty fast. And,
They did.
and then when they discontinued it, we all assumed, well, they're done. They're just completely done. And all of a
Right.
sudden, earlier this week, a bunch of people, including myself, got email notice from Samsung saying, "Hey, by the way, we've got some more."
Mhm.
And
You know it's
they
back
were-
in
they were-
stock, right?
Well, they released them. They released them, I believe, in the morning of the 10th, which, as of this recording, is what, 2 days ago.
Yeah.
And they're already gone. They're gone. So I don't think since they were supposedly discontinued. I have a feeling they just either found some, or they had some that were still in the pipeline, or whatever it was. But there are no more, and I don't think there's going to be any more unless they all of a sudden decide to, turn the channel back on. I just don't see it
Right.
happening.
No,
I think
this
this
was
is
a
it. I think
really
it's done now.
right. This particular device, from my perspective, is ingenious because
It is.
it's really a folding tablet. All right.
It is.
It's about, when you unfold this thing completely, it's almost the same size as like an iPad mini. All right.
Mm.
or similar,
It is.
comparable.
It's about,
right?
It's almost exactly the same. Yeah, you're right. It's
All
about
right,
that
it's
size.
comparable. All right. And to have that thing with a couple of folding hinges and the ability to stick it in a breast pocket, all
Yeah.
right, or in a pants pocket is kind of
Yeah.
an interesting thing. The problem that this particular device has, and I think the one from Xiaomi has got the same particular problem. It's ungodly expensive at $2,900,
Yeah.
US.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really have that
It's
big of a draw
we,
because it is
yeah.
so expensive.
When you fold it up, it's a little bit thick, but it's not that heavy. From what
No,
everybody's saying, its weight is about the same as the 25 or 26S.
right.
So it's not that heavy a device, but it is a little bit thicker because you are folding two screens. And they did the thing they did, as opposed to some of the other competitors out there, the screens both fold inward, so you're not exposing one of the inner screens
To
to
the
scratching.
outside. Yeah.
Your outside screen is an outside screen. It's the same screen that Samsung uses on their Fold 7s, Fold 8s,
Right.
the Fold 7s it's that same outside kind of screen. So it's durable enough. And the thing is, it's enough. They did a good enough job, but the problem is, can't get the price down. And it's, without
This is
that,
this is the
this
problem.
is a hard sell. It's a hard sell. It really
It
is.
is. Well, here's the thing. All right. At the end of the day, all right, no, we said this, and this is what you and I were talking about earlier this week and last week. Nobody ever said, a lot of people said nobody's ever going to pay $1,000 for a phone. All right.
Right.
And now,
well,
most people do.
And you and I took it back a step further. In 2007, we all said nobody's going to pay $499 for an iPhone. They're not going to do it.
The original iPhone for $500 for the original iPhone.
And people went nuts.
Bananas.
And so
absolutely.
The point is, it's hard for us to put these thresholds and say nobody is ever going to do this because we're always going to be wrong. Somebody's going to do it.
Right. Well, you're going to get to a point where inflation has changed, the value of currency has changed, et cetera, et cetera. You've got that built into the whole equation. But
that actually raises a good point now. So right now, the world economy, not just our economy, is at a point that $3,000 is a really hard sell for people right now. People are just not. They don't have the loose cash.
No.
So yeah, I think.
Either in actual cash form or even in credit. People don't want to spend that much money.
Well, and to be fair, I think Samsung has not made a lot of these ever. This particular model, I think the market was always very small, and the availability was always very small.
I agree.
So of course it's going to sell out fast. And what they might do is they might just keep doing a few of these boutique batches, as it were, to. They might do that for a little while. I don't know.
Depends on how well it's received and how well it sells, and
how much it costs them to make it. Yeah,
and what they hear in terms of demand. So
we'll see. But I do think that there's a future potential for a trifold going forward. What we're calling a trifold.
But a tri-panel
fold. Yeah, I do think there's a future for those kinds of things because it is that nice compromise between a phone and a tablet, and you can have both without having to buy separate devices. Okay, I get it. But
it's really, like you said, the biggest impediment though to this device is the cost, and but
it does overcome some of the problems with current single fold phones.
True.
Which aren't quite big enough. So the big problem with the current single fold phone is they're not wide enough. So no matter how you rotate it, you're always letterboxing your video. Whereas with this thing, you're not really letterboxing it as much. So it's much more functional for that. So it actually serves better as a pseudo tablet. So I get it, but not for $3,000. I don't get it.
No,
sorry.
That's just a lot of money.
That's a lot of that, man. That's a lot of slumonians. It really is.
I could be Tevye running around singing "If I Were a Rich Man," but I'm not. So,
Thank you.
Right.
So
thank you.
Not going to happen. Not going to happen.
Nope.
Thank you for not doing that from the bottom of our heart.
I'm very pleased not to do that.
Yes. You know what I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do now?
What are you going to do now?
I'm going to go ahead and move us to our Windows and Linux segment, but I'm going to go ahead and do that right after this brief message. Hi. This is Christopher Spera from iTechGear.org. I wanted to talk with you today about becoming a contributing donor. to the site. iTechGear.org has been around for almost 15 years. In fact, our anniversary is just around the corner on January 10th, 2025. 15 years. Where has the time gone? I mean, I've never really asked for any kind of donations for the site. It's always been about me providing value to you, a site visitor or podcast listener. The iTechGear Weekly is now in its 4th year of production, and Chris G, Joel, and Dr. Mr. Larry McJunkin and I are having a really great time providing you with some of the best free tech talk available from time-tested original internet writers, testers, site founders, and professional writers and editors on the internet. I truly believe that our crew has some of the best and most qualified pundits and commentators on the internet today. And we're not hobbled by any kind of sponsorship or affiliated relationship or other time-bought posts. It all comes from the heart. Unfortunately, times are kind of tough. And since the COVID-19 pandemic of 2020 to 2023, yes, almost 3 full years, times have become increasingly difficult for small independent sites like iTechGear.org to stay afloat. You know, I normally do this with a portion of the salary I make from the day job, but with the IT market so tight right now, it's really difficult sometimes for many to make normal household ends meet, let alone fund a site like iTechGear that might decide to bring in a buck or two. You know, it ain't easy. If you find any of our content on iTechGear or from ITGW to be of any value at all, I would seriously appreciate you donating as little as just $1 to the cause. While we do have a Patreon site, it's hard to keep one website up, let alone 2. And since it's really only me doing the work, our Patreon site hasn't really helped us at all. If you can make a donation to the site or to the show of any amount, I'd be forever grateful. All donations will go to site maintenance, hosting, podcast hosting, and everything iTechGear related. Donations can be made to my PayPal account at chris@itechgear.org. Make a donation. We'll thank you immediately on the next ITGW episode and voice our gratitude. I want to thank you. We appreciate your consideration, time, and attention. Now let's get back to the latest iTechGear Weekly episode. And welcome back to the iTechGear Weekly episode number 168. Ring my bell. And I want to go ahead and get us into our Windows and Linux segment as I promised. And you know, I think this is really this. We've got some really interesting stories here in the Windows and Linux segment. And the first one, I saw this and I'm like, yep, they're going to follow a couple of other countries and doing this. France now is ditching Microsoft Windows and their government agencies for a distribution of Linux.
Mm-hmm.
Aren't they, Larry?
They are. And you know what? When I first read this story, it wasn't really the technical issues that resonated with me, nor do I give a crap about which computing system the French government or any other government chooses to use.
Agreed.
What struck me when I first read this is that this is Microsoft managing to piss off an entire major world country with the same problems that it levies not only on France, but you and me and Joel and everybody else.
Right.
You know, we've not yet reached the top of the mega mountain of dumbness that Microsoft's been building. But I sure hope. Go ahead.
Well, you raise a very good point here, because this particular story, the way this link was spread, says it's anti-American tech. It's not.
Right.
It's not what it's about. It's about people like Microsoft pissing people off. It has nothing to do whether it comes from America or not. They don't like what Microsoft is doing. End of story.
No, and I honestly hope the folks in Redmond soon wake up and smell the odor of people leaving them for something that worked, like Linux. In this case, France is dumping Windows, so they aren't beholden to an American country who is stretching its monopolistic or tendencies, if you will, across borders. And I get that you have to be a little bit geeky to use Linux, but that's slowly changing worldwide. And you can actually say, I think honestly now, I can say that Linux is probably the most single international operating system we know. I mean, look how many websites are run on Linux. All of them of any
and have been for almost 30 years.
Well, in addition, if you're in a corporate environment or a government environment or whatever, and you've got a IT support team, that helps you overcome some of the challenges of Linux rather than having to do it yourself. So there you go.
Yeah. But my French lesson for today is good on France for having the le couille to dump Microsoft. Now go look that one up.
So let me expand on that thought a little bit, because you're right. It's awesome that they've done this. It really is. It's not just the OSs that are getting dumped. They're dumping Microsoft product suites, the O365 suites.
Yeah,
right.
And so as we said, France is doing it now. Germany probably did it first. Not the whole government of Germany, but some of the bigger states.
Some of the bigger agencies, yeah.
The bigger states in Germany have done it.
But if it works for them, it'll be all of it.
Yeah. China dumped it. China dumped, and they're still in the process of doing it. But China's dumped it. They have a directive saying get rid of it, these companies. Russia's did it. They did it a while ago, and they're all kind of going. Denmark's looking at it. South Korea's looking at it. Turkey's looking at it. They're all looking at their own kind of distributions. Turkey, unfortunately, has its own distribution of Linux that basically lets the military and the government control what the user sees. But that's a whole nother animal. Unfortunately, that's kind of the downside of one of the things Linux lets you do.
You guys have to use Windows. I get that. I don't.
It's a work thing.
I don't have a thing in my house that's Windows anymore. Nothing. Microsoft. Nothing.
So what I'm reading is the people that are dumping Windows, the companies, the governments that are dumping Windows, primarily are going to some flavor of Linux. Like I said, either Ubuntu or Astra, Debian, one of those other releases. People are dumping Microsoft Office and going to LibreOffice or only Office, depending on where you are. People are dumping Teams and Zoom, and they're going in. There's a company. In France. There's Zoom. The Teams replacement is called Visio, not to be confused with Microsoft Visio. It's a different homebrew thing in France, and some other things like that.
Not going to last very long.
Outlook, they're dumping it for OpenExchange or Thunderbird.
Yeah.
So there you go. Those are the ways.
The new version of Thunderbird. If you guys haven't looked at that, that is a solid client, man.
But these are the ways.
Just look at it someday.
These are how they're going to it, and I think that makes a lot of sense for folks. I think what they're doing makes a lot of sense. So it's interesting.
Oh, I agree. I mean, they're getting rid of all of the problems that Microsoft has been, experiencing in terms of quality and Windows support over the last couple of years. And I don't blame them for doing it.
Probably the biggest thing that's driven them there is Copilot. So what's Microsoft doing, Chris, about this?
Well, Copilot has been proliferating Copilot buttons on everything. Every application, including Notepad and Outlook and the new Outlook, and they're sticking Copilot buttons in places that you would not necessarily think that there should be a Copilot button.
We know where we'd
like a Notepad snipping tool.
Yeah, thank you, Larry. Thank you.
and widgets and things like that. And apparently Microsoft has started seeing that there's a problem. And so,
I still don't understand Copilot in Notepad. What the heck was the point of that?
What?
Yeah, all I'm going to tell you here, kids, is that
the snipping tool, like I needed
quote
there.
unquote unnecessary Copilot buttons are being removed.
Do you wonder how far they're really going to go with that, though? I mean, are they just paying lip service to it, or are they actually going to do something useful?
Is this just a reaction?
Yeah.
Well, Microsoft is saying this is a part of a broader plan to quote unquote fix Windows 11.
Yeah,
All
right.
right. And while they're removing the buttons, the underlying AI features in the operating system and in a lot of these apps isn't going anywhere. So the features are still there. You just may not necessarily have that, neon flashing, hey, use Copilot to do
So,
tasks thing
so
going
not
on.
so. What it seems to me then, what we would say here is that they haven't changed their underlying direction. They're just cleaning up some of the UI a little bit. They're it's the cosmetics of it. That's all they've changed. That's nothing.
Yeah.
That's nothing.
And that's, yeah.
I want to know that thing isn't going around in the background doing something I don't want it to do. That's what I want to know.
I agree. All right.
Back up. Oh, I'm sorry. Did that come out loud? Sorry about that.
That's okay. All right.
Recall. Oh, hang on. I've got a problem here. I'm sorry. I'm having a problem tonight.
Right. The problem is, you're still going to have all that stuff there. All right. And while the Copilot button may be gone, you may still see things in drop down menus to do these certain things. And while the removal of the button is a good first step, all right.
It's better not be the end step though.
It really shouldn't be. The problem that we have here is that especially from a Microsoft Windows, which is on 90+% of all desktops in the world. Microsoft has been accused of being a little bit too much in your face with all of their AI-based strategy products and et cetera. And, with them putting, Copilot buttons in applications and on physical hardware keyboards and, logos on the start menu and just about everywhere you look. I mean, people are sick of seeing it and having it shoved in their faces. And when that happens, I mean, what do you think that they're going to do? They're going to rebel. They're not going to use the product because
it's not just Copilot. It's all these features that they've been shoving down our throats. But supposedly they're doing more to fix some of that, aren't they now?
Well, sort of, maybe. Yes. Sort of, yes.
Yeah.
Microsoft has, according to our good friend Ed Bott. Boy, I love Ed.
I love Ed.
I can't say enough about Ed. He's a good egg. He really
Ed, you're our hero.
Go Ed. Team Ed. Microsoft has, back in 2015, Microsoft released the Windows Insider program, and it's been a place for them to go ahead and shove all of their upcoming features and future releases of Windows, both Windows 10 and Windows 11. And as of late, they've been having a lot of problems with it. The channels have gotten very confusing, and so what they're doing now is they're trying to change that, and hoping that what they're doing is going to make it not a confusing mess. All right. They're making the Windows Insider program less complicated. So the beta channel is going to be more of a reliable preview of the next retail release. All right. And I guess what they're calling it, they're taking the Canary and Dev channels, and they are sticking them into something that is now called experimental. All right. So you used to have like 4 if from Canary to Dev to Beta and then release preview. All right. And while there will still be a release preview channel, all right, especially for corporate customers who want to go ahead and get access to the next version so they can do testing on their corporate applications and whatnot. You're really taking those 3 and shoving them down into 2. You've got Canary and Dev now into something called experimental, and Beta is still Beta.
But you know what? That isn't even really. That's only half the problem. because within those channels, they tended to have an A/B kind of process where only
Yes.
certain people got it at one time. So what would happen is the tech media would report, "Hey, this new thing is out in the beta channel,"
Yeah.
and then only half the people would see it. And they're like, "What do you mean?" So then the confusion ensues because
Right.
half the people that think they're going to see it don't see it.
Because
Until
it
they
was a
get rid of
completely random process as far as the
right,
consumer was
right,
or the member was
and
concerned,
you still didn't know when you were going to get it,
or if you would get it.
and you felt that just because you subscribe to a particular channel, you may or may not get what you think you may or may not get. So it's
Right.
still confusing unless they get rid of the A/B split on things. I think they've only solved half the conversation. They really haven't addressed the whole thing. They've only
Right.
partially addressed it.
No, I
It's
agree.
still confused. It's still confusing. Yeah, you came down from 4 layers to 2 layers, but you still have 2 possible splits within each of those layers, and you still don't know what they mean.
That's true.
You still don't know
You know?
what you're going to get unless they
And
get rid of that.
depending on the processor that you've got, all right,
Fair enough.
all right. So because you've got Windows 11 25H2, which is for all of your Intel and non-Snapdragon
Right.
X2 ARM chips. Anything that's not a Snapdragon X2 ARM is going to get 25H2, whether you're on Intel or ARM. 26H1 is only for those computers that have or will have a Snapdragon X2 ARM chip.
Yeah, it's also
which
true.
I think is bad. I think you're creating you're going to create a huge schism here.
The split. What I'm getting at is they've only barely touched on cleaning this up, as far as I can tell. This is a step in the right direction, but not a very big.
It is not the know-all end-all. It's not the end of it, and they
This
need
is
to go
another
a
one that
little bit
almost
farther.
appears. It almost appears more cosmetic than functional, but we'll see. We'll see. Well, there you go.
Yeah, and that's about where we're at with all of this thing. All right. They need to stop the A/B testing. They really, really do. They need to stop the A/B testing and get back to quality testing. But I'm not gonna, and that's all I'm gonna say. I'm not gonna climb on that soapbox again this week because it's just too damn. What they're doing is too stupid. And that's all I have to say about that.
Okay.
All right. But you know what I'm gonna do now?
What are you gonna do?
I'm gonna move us to our tip of the week segment. All right. Before we get to this week's actual tip, I want to remind everybody that, again, iTechGear was founded with the intent of making technology easy for everyone to use and to understand. And this team specifically has dedicated their 30-plus years of writing experience and careers to that specific purpose. So every week, the iTechGear Weekly is going to feature a new computing tip authored by one of our experienced editors. And if, again, you have questions, concerns, comments, or dare I say ideas, if you write them down and send that to tips@itechgear.org and we use your thing on the air, we're going to go ahead and give you your 15 seconds worth of fame. This week, I want to go ahead and remind everybody that, if you're using a browser with your computing device, whether it's a tablet or a computer or a phone, your browser's got something called a cache. All right. CACHE. Some people will pronunciate that cache. All right. And that's not how we pronunciate that. All right. It's cache. All right. At least as far as browsers are concerned. And you've also got cookies and things like that as well. And this is something that you should do often, pretty often, but lots of folks don't. All right. Because your web browser is going to store temporary files known as cache and cookies to speed up rendering of websites and to remember your settings. Over time, these files pile up and they can actually slow your browser down. All right, they can cause errors or even expose you to privacy risks. And clearing this up regularly will help keep your browser running smoothly. It'll also protect your personally identifying information and your privacy. All right. It will also ensure that you're seeing the most up-to-date versions of websites instead of outdated cached versions. All right. Cookies can track your browsing activity, so deleting them also improves your privacy. Most browsers have simple options in their settings to clear cache and cookies, either manually or on a specific schedule. And if you're worried about losing saved logins, consider clearing only cache or using private browsing modes for sensitive activities like banking or um, uh, other or shopping or things like that. All right. But keeping your browser clean improves speed, security, and peace of mind. And you can think of it like tidying up your workspace. Regular maintenance keeps everything more efficient and easier to use. And Larry, I want to thank you again for Casho tips that you've
let me add
given
another
us.
thought to that, because I would also add to watch your browser history as well, because you can tell that to clear every time you use your browser. You can tell that to clear daily. You can tell it to clear on a
True.
scheduled. I would consider high history part of this process. I really
Absolutely.
do. And
I
I will
agree
tell
with
you,
you.
I will also tell you, in our work environment, and Joel, you might probably run into this yours as well. We have a lot of browser problems because apps are now browser based, which you guys heard me say I'm not fond of. And this is
Right.
one of the reasons. Logins break and get caught in cache. You have to refresh the cache to get a login to work.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bumpy process sometimes. And so
Right.
clearing your cache is a really, really good first step for a lot of troubleshooting things.
Yes, and even though you may wipe out logins
you
for
might
other websites, this is still something that's going to be.
But if you're keeping a good password manager,
if you have a password manager and you use that password manager and store everything there, you will not bump into this. So
which we
clear
have
your
advised
cache,
before
use a password manager, and you'll be in pretty good shape.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, but that is this week's tip of the week.
Well, good for us.
Absolutely.
Thank
I'm
you,
going to go
Larry.
ahead and I'm going to move us to our pick of the week segment. And again, before we get to the actual pick, I want to remind everybody that our picks are usually hardware, software, and other items of interest that we have individually purchased and that we actually use and that we like enough that we want to recommend them to you, our growing listener base. These are not paid advertisements or any kind of item that we have an affiliated marketing relationship with. These are just things that we find useful, and if they were things that we paid advertisements, or if we did have an affiliated marketing relationship with, the editorial policy over at iTechGear.org indicates that we have to go ahead and let you know about that up front before we give you the pick. These are just things that we sincerely believe in, and we want to bring them to you at the end of each show. Why, Joel?
Because we like you.
There you go. And Joel, you've got the pick. So what is this week's pick of the week?
I'm not going to fix it a little bit. One of the things that, one of the most frustrating things, well, I'm going to say this about pretty much every smartwatch, but especially ones like the Garmin, is that the way you charge them is usually a proprietary connector. All right.
Usually
so
always. Yeah.
The Garmin comes with a USB-A to Garmin, for lack of a better term, connector, and that's kind of what it looks like on the back of my watch here. You'll see
Gotcha.
that.
Yeah.
All right. But it's USB-A to whatever this connector is. So, bought on Amazon, and I think I found this probably initially through there's a Garmin Facebook group of people who have Garmin watches like I do, and they pointed me in the direction of this tiny little thing that basically converts the Garmin connector on the back. So there's the Garmin connector to USB-C.
Ooh, USB-C.
So
so any cable any USB-C cable now will work.
Correct.
It doesn't have to be a USB-A cable. It could be a USB-C to USB-C cable, and you stick that thing on one of the ends of the USB-C connectors, and you're good to go.
And it even comes with a tether, which here unfortunately has separated, but I should be able to put it back on. It's just a wire, but
nice.
So that you can keep it on the end of that. But it was $9.99, but not just for that one.
Yeah,
I got 4 of them.
You got four of them. For
So
10
like I could
bucks.
stick them anywhere. I can have one downstairs. I can have
Sounds
one
like
in
a
my
late night
office.
infomercial there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it
But
More of
was
them.
wait, there's
really,
more.
More.
it was really, really cool, and it works wonderfully compared to the. I actually dare I say I think it actually works better than the one that comes with the
What?
with the watch.
Hey, let me ask a broader question. So,
Yeah.
Chris, I know that the Apple Watches use this kind of flat disc thing on the
Yep.
back and
Yep.
magnetically connect. What did the Samsung watches use?
They've also got a flat disc thing. It
So,
looks very, very much like an Apple Watch
so why
connector.
doesn't everybody get to like standard
Why
Qi
doesn't everybody
Version
charging
one.
standardize on that?
to standard
Because
Qi charging?
Because
because no.
yeah.
All right.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You mean the EU hasn't mandated it yet?
Not yet. Not yet. Give them a little bit. They'll get there.
Yeah, they
all right.
will.
I mean, they're forcing connector standards. You'd think this would be something that they'd be right up their alley.
And what's interesting is the Samsung and Apple will kind of sort of for a few seconds work. Kind
okay.
of for a few seconds it'll work, but then it'll go nope. Got a bad taste in its mouth and it stops charging.
Interesting.
Yep. The one nice thing with these adapters though is they connect solidly to the back of the watch.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
unlike the one that came with, which instead of going in at a right angle, because this kind of goes into if you look at the picture on the Amazon link, it goes in at a right angle. So and it can go in either way. So I can either have it lay across the sensor like they have in the one picture there, or I can have it go the other way. All right, but it's solid, and anytime you wiggle it, it doesn't disconnect. The Garmin one does for whatever reason, but will just and I don't know if it's because I screwed it up. Maybe I got a loose wire in it or whatnot. But it's really kind of always been that way, But
well, this is nice then.
But this is nice because I typically carry a mass amount. Like I'm going to Denver here in a week, less than a week now. And I will have them all. One of these probably in my backpack. I'll stick an extra in my. Not that I actually need it because I actually don't really need it. I can top this off Friday. And I can probably last the whole entire trip without having to charge it. So I don't really necessarily need to have one, but I can have one. I can just stick it in my bag and it's in there. And if for some reason, like say maybe GPS connection gets really horrible or something and I'm on a workout or something when I'm in Denver, which any workout I'm doing in Denver is probably going to be in a gym anyway. But
and even then you still got to watch when you work out in Denver because it's the pressure is a little bit different.
It's called the Mile High City for a reason.
For a reason,
yeah.
folks.
But anywho, but I mean for $10 and by the way, I got the gray ones, but if you don't like gray, you can get black, you can get blue, you can get red, or you can get green. And now granted, the black and the gray ones are $9.99. The blue, red, or green ones are $13.99. So,
but you've got your choice. Is the point, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it's a nice shiny metallic, blue, red, or green. So.
And it's not often that you'll find something this cheap, that's this functional that works with. By the way, this will work with the Phoenix 8, 7, 7X, 6 Pro. Well, it says 6 Pro Solar, but 6 Pro. The Vivo Active 6 5.4S. So all the Vivo Active ones. The Venue 3 and 3S and SQ. And the Forerunners 165, 55. It's kind of like the entire Garmin line.
Right. 970, 965, 265 Tactics, Instinct 3, and Epics 2. So it's
pretty standard on Garmin.
Yeah,
Garmin uses the same connector on all their watches.
Watches, and so that's cool.
So and I right now, I even for such a short race like the 4-miler, I've yet to find a watch that. I mean, I was able to throw in the event right into my watch and start it right from my watch, and it had not that I needed the map, but it had the map up the whole time I was running. But it logged it as, hey, you ran that event, and it's like,
Yeah.
that's really cool.
Yeah.
Now my watch time was a little different than my chip time, but it always is. But but this is a nice little thing to have. I'll always just stick it in. It'll just have a permanent place in my laptop bag. Will be one or two of them things, and then that way, if I'll never forget one. And the other two will be somewhere around the house, probably one downstairs. And I'll still have the standard Garmin cable.
Yeah.
That still works for the most part. That's always sitting at my desk. So
Which is
Well,
kinda
there you go.
Which is kind
There
of
you
cool.
go. So if you're a Garmin user, this is a great thing.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And you know
there's
what?
Not a lot that do that. So
Yeah. And you know what, kids?
That's it.
That's the show. This has been the iTechGear Weekly, episode number 168. Ring my bell. Recorded live Sunday, April 12th, 2026, live from iTechGear Central for Mr. Chris Gavula, Brother Joe McLaughlin, and Dr. Mr. Larry McJunkin. I want to say, hey, we will see you next time.